Starting with the first fight of the night, I thought that there was a clear size difference between Tadger and Clayton Carpenter. And then it was exciting to see once again why the UFC still has Tadger listed at 5'7" while he is somewhere closer to 5'10". But we move. I was shocked when I saw Clayton Carpenter shoot the first takedown of the fight and land it. I believe he was able to get it off of a kick that Tadger threw, but it's not often that someone shoots a takedown against someone from Khabib's camp. Tadger did a great job later in the fight using his jab because he is much longer than Clayton, and he was even able to get Clayton with a reversal at one point during the fight too. Tadger showed that he isn't the quickest fighter, but he does use a very measured approach that got him the win. One takeaway for future opponents is that Tadger is not great from the bottom position, so we could see more opponents try and shoot quality takedowns because these guys are good at stopping the takedowns but struggle from their back, and he could get exposed for it. The second fight of the night we saw was from Ricky Turcios versus Bernardo Sopite, and I think that the decisions went the right way with Ricky struggling to get a takedown since he went 1 for 9 on his attempts while Bernardo was 2 for 3 and also had more control time during this fight. Ricky is cutting close with his time in the UFC because he has lost 3 times and won twice, but both the fights that he won were by split decisions, and he is kind of just built like a rat and is not a very exciting fighter. He looks like a school shooter turned MMA fighter, and I don't think we will see him much longer in the UFC. He will be fed to another up-and-comer to use him as a highlight reel for promotion. First, we had the Tajik Eagle last week come in and look very dominant, and now we have another guy from Tajikistan come in, this time in Moon Gafurov, and he was a serious underdog coming into this fight, and he was able to prove everyone wrong. I thought that he was very good in this fight and would maybe be close to the rankings after one more fight. I don't think that a Henry Cejudo callout makes sense right now, but this guy could face a Pedro Munoz in his next fight. The last fight we had to cap off the early prelims was between Karol Rosa and Eileen Perez. I'm sure some of you probably used this fight as a piss break or used some lotion during this fight, but Eileen Perez was just the better fighter in this division, and I think this proves why the women's bantamweight division stinks so badly. There is no skill involved in the division, and it is just a bar scrap every time, but Eileen Perez will continue to be pushed toward the top because she twerks during her fights. Grant Dawson had a great performance against Yvette and Diego Ferreira, and I have to say that Grant Dawson has some of the best top control in the lower weight class. He needs an opportunity against another ranked fighter. I know the last time we saw Dawson in the spotlight, which was his fight night main event where he lost to Bobby Green by TKO, was bad, but I think Dawson just had a brain fart then and got caught. No other fighter has as many wins as him and does it in the way he does. He secured 6 takedowns in his fight, and he was able to keep control with those 6 takedowns for almost 11 minutes of the 15 minutes of the fight, which means that Ferreira did not have many intervals to work. Dawson called for Beneil Dariush, and I think that could be a good matchup for both of them. We got an early shock in the Bogdan Guskov fight where his opponent, Billy Alicana, was able to get into a scramble and got back for most of the round and threatened chokes many times throughout the round. It was only in the last 45 seconds that Bogdan Guskov was able to reverse the position and take the back of Alicana. The difference between the two during this fight was that Alicana was looking for a submission, and Bogdan was looking for damage. Bogdan landed some damaging strikes toward the end of the round, and he transitioned to a super tight choke. Alicana even tapped, but the tap came after the horn sounded for the first round to end, so I did not count it. As soon as the second round came about, Bogdan showed that he had some nasty concussive power in his hands and he was able to rock Alicana badly and just tee off on him for like 2 minutes straight. After seeing that he couldn't put him away with his hands, he decided it was better to just go for the choke, and Alicana tapped to it almost right away. I think a good matchup for Guskov at this point could be the Nikita fight because Azamat was supposed to get that fight but he popped for steroids, so I think this is a good step up for Bogdan that doesn't put too much risk. And also Nikita Krylov has been without a fight for so long that it makes sense for him to defend his spot in the rankings. Not much to say about the Azamat Bakajev fight other than Zaisari Reis looked like shit out there, and he did not offer much. When we saw this fight go to the ground, we saw Azamat punish Reis and land some nasty ground and pound that would put most people out, and it did just that because we saw Reis out for a hot minute after the finish. The biggest surprise of the night was 100% the fight that took place as the featured prelim of this pay-per-view, and it was the fight between Peyton Talbot and Ronnie Barcelos. Before this fight, everybody thought that Peyton Talbot was going to run through Ronnie Barcelos, but that was not the case during this fight at all. Instead, we saw the exact opposite thing happen during the fight, and this could be considered a fraud check to an extent. The biggest problem for Peyton Talbot during this fight was his bottom game because even if he did have good takedown defense, A single takedown would render him useless for the rest of the round because he was never really able to get back to his feet without having to give up his neck or other parts for a potential submission attempt. This fight was a huge setback for Peyton Talbot, and I think that they will have to build him up much slower. A good matchup for him next is to face strikers because I think any level grappler in the division could have taken him down and abused him, so giving him strikers should give him lots of time to fix his grappling in the gym. The first fight on the main card was between Kevin Holland and Rainier de Ridder, and I think that it was a show of how bad Kevin Holland is a middleweight. He has the frame to do some damage, but I think that he gets out-muscled by most of the guys in the division, and we have seen this happen countless times and time has gone on. I think the best move for him would be to go back down to welterweight because he got himself ranked there and had a decent record. De Ridder should look to fight someone on the edge of the top 10, and I think a matchup against Jack Hermanson would look pretty good and be pretty interesting because they are both very capable grapplers. In the heavyweight division, we had Mr. Blob Killer himself, Jailton Almeida, take on Sergey Spivak. This was the first time I felt that Almeida put some trust into his striking, and the combination he landed was very clean and crisp. It was the sequence that stunned Spivak and led to the finish. I think that Almeida might go on to face Volkov after this fight because Gain is going to be the one to fight Aspinall if John Jones is too scared to fight. The last fight I'm going to cover is the Yuri fight, and I'm very impressed with how he moved his head during this fight. Many times in this fight, we saw Jamal overextend on his punches, and the first round saw this almost end very quickly because Jamal extended and Yuri jumped forward quickly and did the blitz he always does. Yuri is truly a warrior in this game. I can't wait to see what matchup he gets because he is the most exciting fighter in the UFC and has only had one decision in his whole 30-something fights career.